Dominate Your Day. I'm Dana Williams, and I have the pleasure today of being with Robert Corley. He's the Chief Operating Officer at Mercy Ships. He has the honor of overseeing marine operations, Africa service, global security, and strategic support and execution. I knew Robert from our days at Southwest. He's also a certified Clifton Strengths coach. And he has a mission to ensure that the dedicated crew and staff receive the support they need and provide vital medical care worldwide. I love that. Welcome to the show, Robert. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thanks, Dana. It's great to be here. I appreciate the invite.
Yeah, so you've always been one of those people. We met at Southwest. We were both kind of strengths was starting to happen there,
That's right.
and you really jumped in. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself. You can even start with your strengths since we're kind of talking about that right now.
Yeah.
What are your number one, your top five strengths?
Developer, positivity, arranger, strategic communication. But I'm going to take it one step further. Includer, relator, belief woo, activator, and empathy. And I go to that 11 just as a way to kind of be a little more transparent about me, kind of share a little bit, and then let people find themselves in that. But the way it kind of represents for me, though, that developer and positivity are really key, is that I believe that God's given me the opportunity to paint a picture of hope for other people and that positivity and help them in their journey of how they actually improve over a period of time. While then in that arranger and strategic area is putting the right people to the right things at the right time in a manner that is also adaptable. And then you see I use my hands. There's my communication coming to
There you
life
go.
as well. Yeah.
I love that. And for those of you who don't know strengths, we talk about strengths here sometimes, not all the time, but you can go to my website, danawilliamsco.com, and get more information about strengths. But it is a great tool to use to really unlock your unique talents. And we started using it at Southwest in 2012 and then became strength-based in 2015 and beyond. And Robert, you were there. You were managing a lot of projects. And
Yep.
tell the audience a little bit about your history, even before Southwest and before Mercy Street, or Mercy Ships.
Yeah, so kind of all my started kind of back in 1995 when I joined the Navy, and so I spent 4 years working in the Navy, working electronics. Got to at a very young age. I was 18 when I joined. I went through a year and a half electronics school, and then went to a ship and spent 2.5 years on an Aegis class cruiser out of Norfolk, Virginia.
Yeah.
That meant being put into a leadership position at a very young age. So I got to build on my theater skills from high school and be the voice of what we call the 1MC or the PA system on board during drills, during security drills, and also engineering drills and fire drills, and then also then be assigned to watch over our work center. So at a very young age, in a leadership position. But always really had kind of this that same kind of approach to people, bringing them together, but didn't know what it was at that point.
So when you found your strengths, was that around that 20, when was that, when you found your unique strengths?
Yeah, I think actually I'm going to take it back a little further. When I was in middle school, I always just had this affinity for reaching back. And so in middle school, I'd volunteer at our church, and I would work with the elementary kids. And then in high school, as I got a little older, I'd volunteer with the middle school and the elementary kids. And I felt a strong calling when it was kind of my senior year of high school. I felt God was really leading me towards youth ministry. And so I went to our senior pastor, and they certified me in youth ministry. Now, you also heard me talk about going to the Navy, so I did not follow that calling at that time. What I would see is years later is that God would give me an opportunity as my daughter was growing up to volunteer in her youth group, teaching 3-year-olds or teaching elementary or moving into middle school, high school. And I spent better part of 12 years actually just volunteering there and pouring into kids and youth, and specifically young men, is where I really saw an ability to go and influence them. And when you take a 6th grade boy and you work with them every single year until they graduate high school, you develop such
Amazing.
strong relationships and platforms for them. And so I was utilizing my strengths even just along the way. I just didn't know it. The developer, the positivity, that was always there. My ability to communicate as well. Yeah.
I love the fact that you got all of those, and then that belief coming in too, in your
Yeah.
6 to 10. So yeah, so how did you make that decision to go from ministry to the Navy? I mean,
It's pretty
that was a
easy.
different
Both,
pivot,
yeah.
right?
It was my dad is a retired Navy chief warrant
Ah,
officer. Both my grandfathers were in the Navy. I've got actually, if you look at our wall at home right now, between myself and my wife Tammy, we've got about 25 or 30 different people that have served in the military in our family, cousins, grandparents, etc. My sister,
amazing.
and now my son-in-law, my granddaughter. Like military's just kind of been this theme for us. And so for me, what I always saw growing up is my dad had just kind of showed me what selfless sacrifice looked like, what that
Mm,
sacrifice was.
mhm,
And so he basically taught me that, hey, I need to live for something that's bigger than myself, and that was supported
mm,
by my mom as well. So when I had the opportunity to go join the Navy, it wasn't my first stop, but I did a semester at community college. But then I joined the Navy, and I said, okay, I want to go see the world and get away.
mm.
And so kind of followed in his footsteps. Didn't stay in near as long as he did, but for about 4.5 years, while I was there, I married my wife, who I dated in high school, Tammy. Been married 29 years now,
Mm,
and
wow.
just had the opportunity to go and build a foundation, kind of electronics and military experience that I would then take on. As I got out, I went to work for a company called Acme Brick, and Acme Brick, I was making $10 an hour as a regional electrician. Now, for most folks may not get that electronics and electricity are not quite the same thing. And when you're
Right.
working at a brick plant in East Texas, you're working on something that was probably 7 years old. So taking old wires, old materials out of this brick plant. And I remember vividly. You talk about pivot points. I remember being on we had big brick kilns that you'd have rail cars full of brick that would flow through. And I remember that a pump motor had gotten stuck on the exit door, and so the exit door was open. So I had to climb up on top of this brick kiln to fix this pump motor. At the same time, that all this heat is just rolling, rolling, rolling. So
Mm,
it had to be, I don't know how hot it was, but sweat just pouring off your face, off your body. You couldn't open your eyes. And it was at that point I said, this is not what I want to do with the rest of my life. I'm
mm,
not going to do this. And so I went to work for Nokia. And so I left
mm,
and I went back to my electronics background, started off manufacturing at the facility up in North Fort Worth, and then spent the better part of 12 years at Nokia doing electronics, software customization, got into project management, got into Six Sigma for continuous improvement, finished up my undergrad in electronics engineering, and a lot of leadership roles along the way up until about 2012. Nokia had sold their device business off to Microsoft, and they were looking to move my job to Seattle. And I did not want to go to Seattle, nor take my
mm,
then freshman daughter to Seattle.
mm.
And so I left there and went to work for Brinks and Armored Cars, and as an IT project manager. Spent about a year there, and then went to McKesson in the healthcare distribution industry. Spent about a year and a half working on big tech projects there before I had the opportunity to go to Southwest. And so that was kind of that transition to Southwest from there.
Yeah, so there's a theme here that I want to make sure other leaders hear, because this we do talk a lot of about authentic leadership here
Mm,
and really building yourself from the inside out. And so as you look at all those steps, all of those led to the next thing. What
that's
is your
right.
advice to people that, because you changed, not only you went from Navy to Nokia to to Acme to Nokia, so you went to
Yeah,
different industries.
that's right.
So what's your advice to people right now? There's people out there that are trying to figure out their next step, and what was your thought when you were transferring to other companies and using your skills there?
Yeah, it's a great question because if you think about it, you got the military, you got the brick construction, you got telecommunications, you got secure logistics, you got healthcare distribution, you got airline transportation, and even the jobs there. I was doing a lot of back office stuff in HR and finance and supply chain, and then also ground operations and IT. And then I went from there to Mercy Ships, who were doing healthcare in Africa as a nonprofit. And so when somebody looks at that, like, man, you've got a really diverse background. Like, well, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but when you turn it and look this way, when you look down it,
Mm-hmm.
so kind of like think of it like a kaleidoscope. If you were to actually
Mm-hmm.
take all the little bits and pieces that are color inside a kaleidoscope, all these different experiences that you have, and you have the prisms that reflect the light that's coming in. The way I kind of look at that is that all these different bits of colors, experiences, are reflected by the God's light onto the prisms. And that's prisms being me that builds me to where I am today. So I can basically take a look at all those different experiences in military, technology, supply chain, project management, continuous improvement, HR, internal consulting, leadership, strengths, etc. And I can see where God's been kind of building me for where I am today. It's hard to see in the moment, though. So I guess the intentionality, some folks would say you spend the entire time in one lane of business. And some are generalists in that they can cross lines of business, but they have, because their specialty kind of transcends. And so what I found is my specialties have really kind of transcended across multiple industries. So I think being cognizant of that, to look at it multidimensional, you could look at, I want to only work for airlines, or I only want to work for nonprofits. Or you can say, I want to be able to use the skill set of project management, team leadership, and then be able to cross. So that's one, knowing yourself. The other two is your advocacy that you need from other people. So you need that networking, that relationship. We're not meant to go at things alone. So how do you know that can help you think through, process, be able to be mentored through transitions in order to find different opportunities in the world?
I noticed that the leadership was the red thread of consistency from the time you were in fifth grade to here we are, as you know, you leading Mercy Ships. And so who was it? Your dad? Was it the Navy? Who came in your life that kind of taught you what leadership is, and kind of where did you? Who were your mentors? How did you build that leadership muscle?
You know, I think there were initially, if I go way back, I mean, my dad definitely could show me, he could show me what it takes to kind of be a leader in our home, what it took to be a leader in kind of in the world, and by taking such a, I mean, I was playing with G.I. Joe back in the 80s when my dad was in the Navy. And so it was like I could actually then experience, like, I could watch the TV shows and say, oh, that's probably how my dad's acting. And then I could see him in real life when he was running things on board a ship or on shore. And I could say, oh, yeah, he actually is in charge. But what I noticed about my dad is that he was always very focused on the people side of it. And so how do you actually take care of the people? Even in a military, yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am environment, you can still love people. And you can still serve selflessly. And so as he got out of the Navy, what my dad did is he started working in the volunteer fire department in East Texas. And he spent 25 years working, just volunteering his time to go help fires because he'd been trained to do that. And so I can remember times in high school where we would go to a fire together, and I'd be on the back of the truck while he's driving, and I'm madly putting out water in order to stop a brush fire. And so I think there was that initial piece. My grandfather also, my dad's dad, we relocated back down to East Texas in 7th grade. And so I learned how to run cattle. I learned how to run a farm, a lot of things from him, and how to be a leader. And he was a really strong, godly man. And so I got to see what it meant to be a spiritual leader as well, which I thought was really cool. And then I think God just put different people in my paths. In the military, he'd give me some good examples of people to follow. I remember even at Nokia, I got out, and in my transition story, I had a really, really good transition story. And then when I went to work for Nokia after the military, in the manufacturing, half of us had been out of the military, and half of us were trained kind of in the real world through a tech school. But one of the guys, so I got to blend, but one of the guys that got to mentor me, his name was Walter Jarek. He's a retired gunnery sergeant from the Marine Corps, and knew electronics inside and out. He spent 20 years, and he taught me so much about just the trade, and taught me so much about how to look inside myself. So I think, and then you got folks like Jeff Lamb, who you know, and so Jeff and I went to church together as an exec at Southwest Airlines. I knew him there, but also at church I knew Jeff Lamb, and so there'd be times where we'd go pick potatoes in the garden at the church, and we would just talk about life and how we can navigate it together. So.
Who gave you, or you don't have to remember who, but what was the best advice that you received that now you've passed on to those you're mentoring and as you're leading Mercy Ships? Is there some advice that comes up?
It's probably my mom. And one of the things that she told me is the moment of absolute certainty never arises. So make the best decision that you can based upon the circumstances you're in. But don't be afraid to make the decision. And so I kind of, the visualization I came over time was that if you're faced with a mountain in front of you, climb to the top of the mountain, look around, and you're going to see other mountains, and go pick the direction, and then you climb down the mountain, you go to that next mountain, and then you look around and you change your perspective. And I think that's one that I continue to use with people and I think that's one that really resonates with me. Um,
Decision making is a big part of leadership, and
yeah.
also listening, right? We talk a lot about listening here, and leading, to listen. And what is one of the things that you've noticed as you've transitioned from airline business to Mercy Ships, as you're leading in a nonprofit world? Because this month is November, and we're talking about working, those people that have decided to get into the nonprofit world and give back in a different way. So I'm curious, was there anything that you're doing differently as a leader in a nonprofit world that you did in the corporate space?
Yeah, I would say, interestingly, prior to that, I would say that there's actually a lot of similarities. Is that people are still people, and so I think it's really a misnomer sometimes that people say, "Hey, is it really that different?" Well, it is, but it also isn't. And when I think about, if I just think about airlines, for example, you've got all these stations, all these airports out there where you've got different folks that really feel a passion to go and serve others, and they understand their business. They understand what's going on in an airport. For me, it's no different than somebody knowing what's going on a ship. They're running a hospital. They're doing their work. They understand it. These are professionals that have volunteered their time to go. Now, here's the difference. Many of these folks have sold their house. They're doing their own fundraising. They're actually then have supporters back home that they have responsible for, and they're basically going and donating their time. So whether they go for 2 weeks for a surgical block, whether they go for a month, whether they go for 6 months or 2 years or more, and sometimes take their families with them. So this is big life transformations for a lot of these folks. So that recognition is why it's different. Is that and by the way, you're also in a steel box. Your home is there. You don't get to go home at the end of the day. So anybody you may see during the day, if you're a teacher and you're teaching kids, you're going to see those kids at the mealtime as well. But in the nonprofit, I think even outside Mercy Ships, though, the nonprofit space, you're going to see the motivation is still slightly different. It's not financially motivated. Now, people still need to work, and it doesn't mean that that's why they're called to do what they do. Even at Nokia, the money was great, but at the same time, I love just being technical, and I love getting to help people connect to what's most important in their lives. Same thing with at Southwest and others. So. But the intrinsic motivation, I think, is much more than the extrinsic that you're going to get at a corporate job.
I think there's people like you that they've been in corporate for a while and they're ready to kind of go make a difference at a nonprofit. What would be the advice you would give them as you're making that transition?
I think one of the things is the pay is not usually as good, so keep that in mind. Don't do it for the money. Doesn't mean, but you are going to get other benefits, I think, from doing that type of work. Explore kind of what I would go look. The cool thing with nonprofits, you have Form 990s that can show you all the financials. You have access to financial statements that you're not going to see, and access to things like salaries and expenses and everything else. So you're going to get to kind of get a financial lens of these nonprofits. In the nonprofit space, there's also a difference between those that are faith-based nonprofits and those that aren't too. And so being able to understand that there is a difference depending on the motivation and that they all are funded though. And so everything has revenue. You can't run a business, doesn't matter if it's nonprofit or corporate, without that side of it. But if you're interested, I would talk to other people in the nonprofit space. So if you have somebody that's interested in nonprofits, have them reach out to me. I'd be happy to have a conversation with them about my experience. It's not going to be the same as everyone, but I think it kind of goes back to that is expectations and advocacy. Is how do you set the right expectations? And then finding in the advocacy piece, having somebody that can help translate the transition. We do this. Do a lot of work with members coming out of the military, and what they really need is they need somebody to help translate the world differently. So it doesn't matter if you taught for 25 years in schools and you wanted to go do something else. You're going to need to transition somehow. Having somebody that can help walk you through that, like a coach or somebody else, that's going to be a really, really important part, I think, of making that transition from corporate to nonprofit.
How did this happen for you? Here you are at this amazing Mercy Ships, which is based in Tyler, Texas, right?
Yeah.
But the ship is in Africa right now.
Ships are in Africa.
Yeah. So, talk to us a little bit, because our listeners who are wanting to lead authentically to see your heart here and how this happened.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes we kind of quiet our heart and don't listen to it and just think, well,
Yeah.
we're supposed to be doing something that somebody else told us we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so finding your purpose and finding an opportunity like this, how'd that happen?
Well, I was doing some really great work at Southwest and wasn't really looking for a job. But in 2019, what happened is my daughter Tessa got married, and Tessa got married, and she and her then husband, I say then because he was abusive and we got her away from him, and she's remarried to a great guy, great guy.
Good.
But at the time, they moved down to East Texas. And when they moved down here, back to where my wife Tammy and I kind of grew up, it started us thinking, where do we want to be? We're living up in Dallas. We loved our church, but the community in which we were living in was really kid-centric. And so without that, we were like, well, what are we going to do? And so I started looking at jobs in 2019, and just to kind of see what was down in the area. And I came across Mercy Ships, and I thought, okay, what's Mercy Ships doing in East Texas? It doesn't make any sense. There's no big bodies of water. Lake Palestine is not that big. The Trinity River doesn't really flow that far, that well. And but I mentioned Mercy Ships at a small group meeting that met at our house. And our senior pastor, Larry Parsley, mentioned afterwards, he said, hey, Robert, I got a friend of mine that's on the board at Mercy Ships if you want me to introduce you to him. His name is Gary Brandenburg, is his name. And so I said, like, yeah, absolutely. So this is probably around February of 2020. And so he did an e-introduction, and then in March, COVID hit. And so we all went remote. So I was working remote for Southwest, living in Dallas. And Gary and I didn't get a chance to meet officially until I think May or June. We had this little dip, and we were able to go and get lunch. And he said, hey, I'm headed down to headquarters next week. Why don't you come with me? And so I did. We met over at one of the churches, and we drove down, and I got to meet the former CEO and CFO and all the folks there, just to kind of as an intro piece. Had lunch with them and just kind of chatted. And on the way back, one other important thing is that we had already decided we were going to move, so we put our house on the market in April. So even before I'd even met with Mercy Ships, we put our house on the market. So we're just going to leave. And if Southwest calls us all back to the office, then I'll find another job. We're just going to go on faith. Not even think about Mercy Ships at the time. So back to the Mercy Ships piece. That day, driving back to Dallas with Gary, and he said, and I could just feel God calling me, saying, hey, you're going to be involved in Mercy Ships. Now, I didn't know if that was volunteering, donating, or working there, but I said, okay, Lord, when you're ready, you let me know. And we went ahead and moved down. August 2020, we moved down here to East Texas and sold our house. And it wasn't until December of 2020 before I got a call out of the blue. We were just driving around Tyler, and I got a call from Gary Brandenburg. He said, hey Robert, hey, our CEO would like to talk to you about a job. We've got a big project we need some help with. I said, okay. All right. Hey, if CEO is going to call me, I'm gonna take a call. Right? It doesn't matter which CEO you are. We're gonna chat if you want to talk to me. And so what they did is they actually offered me the job as an executive program manager to come on board and get the new hospital ship, the Global Mercy, out of China where it was being built during the middle of COVID. You couldn't send anybody in. You couldn't bring anybody out. Okay, so and I did that. 4 weeks later, I was there, and great support from Southwest. But here's the other thing that I think is important. You talk about authenticity. Is the day that I got the job offer, I was visiting. He was a cousin of my wife's grandmother. We called him Uncle Buck, though, over in Mesquite.
Uncle Buck.
And yeah, he's
We're from Texas here.
That's right, old World War II veteran.
Yeah.
Served in the Army. Was down at Fort Hood the same time Elvis Presley was, and
Oh my gosh.
and it was really cool. A Korean War. I said World War II, but Korean War, and I got the call from the CEO, and he said, "Hey, we'd like to offer you the job." And I said, "Okay." Hey, so I said, "Let me pray about it." And so I left. I left that day in Mesquite, and I drove over to White Rock Lake. And in the area, if you know it, it's got a flagpole hill, and you kind of drive in, you go up and around, and there's a big flagpole. And I took my truck and I kind of parked off to the side of the flagpole hill. And I was like, man, I need to call my best friend. So I called Shamir. He didn't answer. Okay. So I called our pastor. He didn't answer. Okay. So I'm sitting there, and I'd gotten some lunch, And so I was just eating my lunch, and I kind of look out my window, and I look up the hill, and what I see coming down is a little boy, probably about 3 years old, kind of running down the hill. And just a little ways behind him, I see what probably his dad following him down the hill. And the boy's just running all he can, just all out. And about that time, I'm parked right next to the road. I see this car that just kind of comes right by me. And I'm like, this boy is going to run into traffic if somebody doesn't do something. So it was at that moment I had a choice. Am I going to stay in my truck and watch this scene unfold, or am I going to get out and do something? And so I did. I got out and I walked across the road. I met the boy where he was, and I said, stop. And he stopped. He looked up at me. He looked back at his dad. He looked back at me. And about that time his dad got there, he said, thank you, and he went on. And I went back to my truck, and I was just super emotional. It was kind of like just in that moment. And I remember debriefing it with my friend Shamir after that. And he said, Robert, he said, there's 3 characters in that story. There's you, there's the dad, and the little boy. And he said, you're the little boy in this. Is that God's got you. He's going to come across the street to keep you out of harm's way. He's also going to chase you down the hill. And so at that point I was like, okay, I got to go do this. I got to go to Mercy Ships. And so that was kind of the calling story to getting here. And then got there in January of 21, and 2 months later said, hey, we want you to be the COO. In fact, we've been evaluating you for that since we hired you. So
wow. So you actually had to go to China. I love this story, by the way. I love how your friend took that story and said, oh, this is you. And this is why I think it's so important for us to have accountability partners, to have people we can always call and get advice from. I mean, we can, pray and talk, but I think to have somebody say, this is what I'm hearing. Can you help me decipher this? So number one, that was great. But then also how everything unfolded just for you to go. Did you go to China in the middle of COVID?
No, Dana, I had to figure out how to do this remotely. We couldn't get anybody in, couldn't pull anybody out because of COVID restrictions. So we had to launch a brand new ship, get it out of construction in the middle of COVID, and figure out how to do that. And we did it. Supplied
with medical people and all that you had.
Initially, it was just get it out of China, and then we had to go finish equipping it, and we had to equip it in Europe during COVID, which was crazy and chaotic, but we had to go figure all that out of how to navigate because the organization was stopped when I got there. We weren't operating at all, and so I basically spent the balance of 2021 figuring out how to get the organization running again. How do we get back to doing ships, and how do we get our people? And so we had to make some really, really tough calls. And remember, I'd just gotten here. I didn't know the organization well. And by the way, 2 weeks after I took the COO job, our CEO resigned because of health issues. So for the better part of 2021, I was in that role of having to lead the organization completely to get us to where we needed to be. Yeah.
Wow. I hear your experience too, probably in the Navy and being on ships. I didn't know about that. I mean, just even that experience way back when, and then understanding, because most people probably wouldn't understand ship, and then your project management and your electronics and your all the things,
all those little kaleidoscope pieces. Yeah.
In that moment.
That's right.
In that moment.
That's right.
So as you think back now, you've been there how long? Is it 5 years?
4.5 years. It'll be 5 years in January. Yeah.
So what's a big lesson you've learned in this working in nonprofit and serving with Mercy Ships and even just leading people that are volunteers, right? You're leading a lot of volunteers. You're leading a lot of people that are selling things and getting sponsored to be there to serve this effort. What are some of the lessons you've learned as a leader?
One, the complexities are the same whether you're in for-profit or nonprofit. January 2023, we went through a major cyber attack, had to lead the organization through that, shut us down completely. But we made the strong decision to take all of our electronic capabilities and put them on the shelf and go back to manual in order to still go serve people in Senegal at the time. So I think you're going to run into things like that. But you're also going to run into coups in these overseas countries where you're going to have people rising up against the government. I've learned how to meet with African leaders. Never thought I would have to be working with presidents and ministers of health and everything else. So lots of experiences that have come from Mercy Ships. When it comes to an organization like Mercy Ships, it's really complex. because you're running two ships in Africa, currently one in Sierra Leone, one in Madagascar. You've got supply chain distribution coming out of Rotterdam, Holland, and also out of the U.S. You've got 16 national offices around the world that are finding funding and volunteers, and you've got to be able to figure out how to get each one of those people to the ship in their window when they're able to volunteer to meet the surgical demands of these countries. And the key is these countries are all growing and they want to make themselves better. They want to increase healthcare access in all these countries. And they need training, and they need also to help offset the surgical burden, which is what we're doing to help them. And then I think the other big thing is that we're doing a mission that's bigger than what we should be able to do. The only way this works is because God is in it. It otherwise shouldn't work. Hospital ships are expensive. Very expensive. I mean, we're talking $150-200 million a year that we're actually spending on running ships. My operating budget alone is, I think, 57 million that we're actually running in order to fuel, maintain, et cetera, just the vessels, let alone staff them and everything else. And so it does take a lot of effort. But if you want to do surgical care in Africa, you'd build a hospital. But these ships work. They get the view.
Yeah.
And people see them, and they're able to attract, and they're able to provide impact, and they have been doing so for 47 years now, 46 years. Yeah.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about purpose and mission. So the mission of Mercy Ships is what?
Yeah. So our mission is to really follow the 2,000-year-old model of Jesus to provide hope and healing to the world's forgotten poor, to those that need it most. We do that with the kind of 4 core values: love God, and love and serve others, be people of integrity, and people of excellence. And those are our four ways to kind of go and do this. Yeah.
And then you mentioned one of the things that we love to do here is work with leaders and their teams on working on their individual mission statements, and then tie those into the organization's mission statement. And I saw that you have a personal mission statement there at Mercy Ships. So can you share what your personal mission statement is?
Yeah, I mean, when you think of it, like me personally, kind of what my mission is. Yeah, I maybe I'm not even remembering what I wrote then, but I can tell you that I think the way I would describe it would be that my mission, my personal mission, is to help serve and influence all those around me, that in whatever way I can, for the good of God, good of country, and the good of the world. And I think I do that by there's obviously some sacrifice that has to happen in that, but I feel like God gives me the energy to continue doing it. And so utilizing my strengths and talents. I think for each individual here, we do utilize Gallup strengths, and so it's pervasive across the organization. It's one of the great things I was able to bring over with me when I met Lisa Bose, who does this for us now, and we're starting to see just the ability that it gives everybody across the organization to figure out how they can be their best self every single day and serve to their best capacity.
I know there's people out there that haven't brought strengths to their organization, and as coaches, we get to work with them and help them do that. How did you get that started? How did you get the strengths movement started there at Mercy Ships?
Yeah, it kind of started back in 2012 with our chaplaincy department. They started it just to kind of go and do it, just as like strengths individually, and then a little bit as a team, but nothing major. When we had Lisa Bose, who's a strengths coach and kind of runs our program for leadership development now, she was here in 2020. I think she got here 2019. And it was really when I got here and we started talking about it, and she was like, yeah, we really love to amplify this. I'm just like, well, okay, let's go. And so we signed a contract with Gallup to start with strengths, and started using it in our onboarding program, where everybody gets their top 5. And then I was just on the ship here a few weeks ago, and we did a leadership retreat, and then Lisa and I were co-facilitating a strength session for the organization about how you can do this in teams, and how you can do this as leaders, how you can utilize them in order to catalyze the people around you. And so it's just grown. Just rolls like water, like Gallup likes to say.
And I think it becomes a part of your organization. And I think that I was talking to a new client today about that. I said it's a drip. It's not like you come in and you've done your strengths and you're done. But what I like to do is add the strengths, the core values, the mission, and then the emotional recognition in with that. So it becomes a daily pattern of how do we manage ourselves from the inside out as we're leading.
That's right.
And so I love that you've created these opportunities for leadership ongoing with your new, I guess, new doctors, new volunteers, new
That's right.
teammates as you bring them on so that everybody feels like they're connected to the work.
That's
So that they're,
exactly. I mean, you walk on one of our ships, and at everybody's door, you're going to see their top five strengths. You're going to see them using it in their talks together. They're going to say, "Hey, man, I really love your positivity, and let me talk. No, talk to me about that. How does that represent for you? How does that make you feel?" And so you'll start to see that a lot. So it's not just the coaches. There are 5 or 6 of us, I think, organizationally, but it's a
that's
lot of
great.
the team leaders that have really come along board and the long-term crew to use that. Yeah.
So tell us as we get ready to close out, I would
Yeah.
love to hear two things. One, your favorite Mercy Ships story from,
Yeah.
saving somebody's life or something you all have done. And then two, your favorite bit of advice or something that's coming up for you that maybe I didn't get to ask you that you want to make sure
Yeah.
our listeners here that are difference makers, they just want to make an impact and they want to be in that purpose every day.
Absolutely. Well, I think as far as a mercy shift story, mine are usually about the crew themselves. And so
Good.
often people hear about the patients, but I don't feel like God's called me to serve the patients directly. It's never really been that way. I've never really served the customers as much. What God's given me the opportunity is to serve the people that serve the patients, or the people that serve the people that serve the patients, or take it on down. And so, what I start to see is, I'll give you a fresh example. So we're looking at scaling up one of our ships, the Global Mercy, to run 5 ORs. It has 6 ORs on board, but we've been, due to staffing and everything, we've been able to run 4, but we need to scale up to 5, and that comes with a lot of hesitation for people. Because they're worried about, are we going to have enough people? Do we have enough supplies? What's patient safety look like? And so we're able to help them navigate through those emotions and through those feelings. And I think what I was able to see even today was that people are starting to calm down a little bit and they're starting to get it. But here's the trick. What we did was we empowered them to make the decision of whether or not we go to 5 ORs. Is that we've said, we're going to go and establish all these criteria, we're going to understand it, but ultimately you who are on board the ship in the moment are going to get to make the decision. And that level of empowerment and autonomy has led them to feel a much stronger sense of ownership. And so for me, what that translates to is they will then be able to go and serve patients even better. And so mine are usually people stories there instead of
I
patient
love that.
stories.
That
Two things I mentioned earlier. I get to work with veterans, and I think I mentioned the transition. I think that's a really great thing. But maybe more personal is the story of just kind of the mental health area. And so my sister committed suicide in 2002. And it was really, really hard. She had been attacked a couple times. She got into some recreational drugs, and as well, that led to her deciding that was the only way out. And so for a period of about 6 or 7 years, I just kind of buried that. I didn't really deal with it. She was kind of my best friend growing up. Even my senior year of high school, her freshman year of high school, she sat at the same lunch table, which is weird, with a bunch of friends. But that's because we were, I felt like I needed to help her integrate, and it worked. But when I left, she didn't have as much support at home. And so there was a lot of guilt and built up in that. And so about 6 or 7 years afterwards, about 2008, 2009, I just remember just hitting really low spots. And I went to, I just volunteered all the time at church and tried to get involved. But I remember going to a poverty simulation in South Dallas and meeting a woman named Landa Parker, who was volunteering at the Dallas Suicide and Crisis Center. And I went through a 16-week course there. And what I learned there was that what I would have is other folks would ask me, "Hey, how have you dealt with that? It's been like 6 or 7 years." And I was like, I haven't. But what God put me into a position of empathy to be able to listen to them and help them process through their raw, recent stories. And so I share that story because, one, I think mental health is important. Two, I think it's got a stigma to it. And I think as leaders, we deal with a lot of trauma. And whether that's personal trauma, like being a survivor of suicide, or whether that's something that's happened to you individually, or you're dealing with your people and having to go through a massive layoff and lay off folks, that's traumatic as well. Is get the help. It's okay. And so I often just talk about the fact that I've got scars. You may not be able to see it. I've got a scar on my hand. And these scars, this one specifically, if I had not stretched my hand, if I had allowed it to contract, it would stay contracted. So if I don't use those scars, those experiences, those things that God's allowed me to have in my path in order to share my story, if I don't share that story, my heart will contract as well. And so I have to always share that story. So anyway,
That's a
maybe that
great
helps.
metaphor too for your heart and your scars. And thank you for being vulnerable. And I think when we work through that inner pain, like you talked about, there's a blessing that comes from that, and you end up
Absolutely.
serving people you once were.
That's right.
Because you've gone through it and you get it. You get it what it
Yep.
feels like to be a family member, a close family
That's right.
member, and lose somebody. And how
That's right.
important it is as leaders right now to really be there and be be around for our people, and like you
That's
said,
right.
be focused on the people who serve the customers.
That's exactly
I love
right.
that.
That's exactly
Yeah.
right. So
That's
it's a great encouragement, because when I tell that story, a lot of people will come up to me, and what I'm reminded of is that God put me here for a certain purpose. He put me here in His purpose and not mine, and so I'm able to actually go and utilize those stories to be able to help, just encourage others and use that positivity to paint a picture of hope in order to be able to help people every single day. And I just love that I get that opportunity to do what I do.
Well, and that's your passion and that's your uniqueness coming out. I heard it so much today. Your developer, your communication, all of that. This is amazing. Robert, thank you so much. If somebody's interested in learning more about Mercy Ships, where would you send them? What's the best place for them to learn about how they can
You can go to
give
Mercy
and how
Ship.
to give?
Mercyships.org is the easiest one. I mean, if somebody's got a specific question they want to reach out, you can reach out to me as well. Robert.Corley at mercyships.org. Happy to answer questions if they come. Mercyships.org is probably the easiest one. But we're always needing people of all walks of life.
Robert, thank you so much. Today's been really enlightening and just encouraging. We're really focused this month on helping people find ways that they can give back and share and just generosity. And I love how you're using your talents to do that. So thank you so
Thanks.
much for being here with us today.
Absolutely. Thanks, Dana. Appreciate you.